Hi, Tin from K-On here. Today we're going to have a look at how you can store a table underneath your roof rack. So everyone brings a folding table of some sorts when they go camping, but generally it's underneath everything, it's hard to get to, and it's probably the first thing you want to pull out so you can put your gear on top of it so it doesn't get dirty and messy. Now, this is a solution that allows you to store a table in between your roof rack and your roof, and we've come up with a solution to help you carry that folding table. Now this table here, I'll take it out for you to see. This is an inexpensive blow molded folding table that you can get from Bunnings. Perfect place to put it, allows you to pull that out as soon as you get to camp. Now let's go and have a look at how you install this. We've got a rack up on the hoist here because that's going to make it a lot easier for you to see how the table slides are attached. Now, first thing you need to consider if you're wanting to install this is clearance. So we need 50mm clearance is what we're recommending. The actual slide sits down from the lowest point on your roof rack about 40mm, but you want that extra 10mm just in case you're loading up your roof rack, and you want that clearance because you don't want that table rubbing on the top of your roof. The system we've used here is we've got 2 stainless steel slides which are held in by clamps. Now this clamping system allows you to position those clamping points anywhere along that slide. We've done this to allow compatibility with as many roof racks as possible. Now we've confirmed fitment on Rhino platform version 1, platform version 2, and as well as Front Runner. But having said that, any roof rack system that has a way to mount underneath on the rails here, whether it's be a T-slot or bolts, should be able to accommodate this slide. Now, to tell you the truth, this is an absolute pain in the butt to install, but once you've got it on there, you'll love the product. That's why we don't have a vehicle underneath this rack. A couple of options on how to install. You can either do what we've done here and take the rack right off. You could, if you've got enough room, get in under there and get your hands in, maybe get your kids to give you a hand. The other thing you can do too is you can remove, unattach one side of the roof rack and lift it up so it gives you enough room to get in there and tighten up the nuts and bolts. Anyway, we'll get into it and I'll show you some of the different hardware and the different options that we have for mounting these slides, and then we'll get into actually installing the slides. Let's have a talk about how these slides are attached and the 3 different options that we've provided for attachment. Now, this is the platform version 1, and it runs a typical sort of a HD crossbar, which is similar to a Unistrut profile. So we provided a Unistrut on a spring. Now, the reason why we've gone to the extent of using a spring is because it helps you position it and hold it in place while you bolt that in place. Really helpful. Now on the version 2, those are too big, too wide, so we've provided an aluminium slot nut. No spring on this one, but eventually you'll get it attached. And then Front Runner, they like to use just a bolt, so they've got a T-slot that suits a standard M8 bolt, and then you just slide that along and bolt that up, and we supply a nylock nut for that as well. Now, the other thing I'll talk about with this clamp here is we've purposely notched it there so that you can, so that it retains the slide, because one way to do it is to put all your clamps in place and actually slide this slide in place. Anyway, that's how it clamps to the roof rack. Allows us a lot of flexibility to move these points, and if you have a think about it, potentially a lot of crossbar applications will be able to attach this table slide as well. But we'll go ahead now and install the other side to show you what's involved and some tips and tricks on how to install it and get this thing going. If you can find yourself one of these, it'll make your life so much easier. So what it is, it's actually a ratcheting open ring spanner. Reason being is you'll have about 50mm of clearance in there, and you have to get past the backbone system or whatever, the legs. So you want something that's nice and low profile in there. And just imagine that there's something there. That makes your life so much easier than trying to use a socket or a ratchet, a normal open spanner. So get yourself a 13mm ratcheting ring spanner makes your life heaps easier. We're going to install a slide. Now remember that there's usually a vehicle here, a roof here. So the method, the procedure I'm going to show you here is how I would probably do it if it's up on a vehicle. Now you want to grab your nut blocks first. These are the spring-loaded ones, and just roughly position it on the roof rack where you think it should be. These spring-loaded ones are good because they won't slide around too much. So I'll put one there. Now, depending on your roof rack, you want to get at least 2 mounting points. We've supplied three sets of clamps, and 3 is better, but you could get away with just 2, which means sort of 4 clamping points. Now I'm going to line these up as best I can. Now there's a line on the roof rack here which makes it easy. Okay, so I've got the nut blocks up in the crossbar rails. Grab your clamps, M8 bolt. Make sure you have the washer in place as well, that's important. We'll loosely attach these in place. I might go up a bit more. Not too tight, you want to still leave a gap enough there to slide the actual roof slide in place. Let's go do that. Of course, it's not going to be this quick if you're sliding your hands in between the roof and the roof rack. Okay. Your slide, this is towards the opening, the back, where the table's going to slide out. This is the other end. We've got the a bumper, the rubber bumper pinch weld on the end to hold the table in place. And this is the little clamping sort of flange rail that we're going to slide. Now, look, we're going to just pretend that that's on the vehicle. Now, make sure you get the right one too. This is the left-hand one, opening for the table there. Now, let's just imagine that was being slid in between the roof rack and the roof. Get someone to help you. There you go. I cheated a bit. Now, you want it to be sort of flush to the end there. But before we do anything else, we're going to need to get this width correct. Now, I've already installed one on one side. When you install the first one, you want to get it nice and parallel, and that sort of sets the position of where the table sits on the roof rack. Make sure that's parallel or square or the same distance from the end. Now I'm going to grab a table and put it up in there, even though this is loose, and then I'm going to set the width. Actually, before we put this table up, I'm going to tighten these up until they're almost home, and then just back them off a little so that I can still adjust them. Tighten it up and just back it off a little. So that way I can still adjust it, but it's fairly square and secure, so it doesn't fall down. Okay, I've got my table. My Bunnings marquee table, 1200 by 600 roughly. Now I'm going to put this up here and set the width. So what I'll do, so it's up there. Now I'll just pull this over. Okay. Now, you don't want it to be too tight. It makes it hard to slide in and out. So a little tip here, I just got a little bit of cardboard, and I'm just going to sort of wedge it in there to set my clearance. Yep, so there. And then we'll tighten up this end. Make sure, yep, that looks good. I'll just tighten up that end, and we'll do the same on the back here. The other way you can do it is you can actually just measure it, but I find this is a little bit easier because it's probably pretty hard to measure underneath the roof rack. Okay, so I've just nipped the front and the back one there. Now before I go any further, I need to check that everything's actually square. And the way to do that is if you come out the back here and have a look, I've got the table sliding nicely. Now, when you come to the back here, you want to make sure that that's evenly up against these bumpers. Now, if you've got a gap on one and one's up tight, that means it's a bit skew-if and it's out of square, but this is nice and perfect. You can see that they're both compressed equally. So we know everything's nice and square and parallel. So that being the case, I'm going to go and tighten the rest. This is where this ratchet spanner comes into play. You can see how easy that ratchet spanner makes it, especially when you don't have much room. Now, you guys with backbones are going to have fun because the backbone system doesn't really give you much access, but I'm sure you'll find a way to get it up there. Okay, I've got both sides of the slides tightened up, in position, really happy, nice and parallel. Just check operation of the slide. That feels really good. So next thing to do is to get the crossbar in place and just make sure that's working. I find that if I just place one end in first, I can just push the other end in and clip it in like that. Now that's held in quite nicely and we're pretty happy with that. So that's the main install completed. This is our locking bar that holds the table in place. Really simple design, but we're quite confident that it'll hold your table in place. So let's have a look at it. Now this is locked in place at the moment. There's some little tiny tabs that hold it down, and the sort of the springiness in the rubber bumpers holds it in place. So to release them, you want to push it forward and lift up. So you can either brace your fingers on the top there and just push forward and up. It'll just come out like that, and you can sort of see the way that it works here. Now to install, you can do the same again. You can just get into the slot, push it forward and down, and you can see how it moves forward into that catch, so it doesn't pop up anymore. And you can see that's nice and secure. Another variation to that, that I like to do is I like to actually install the tab on this side in place first. Hold that down and just push on this side until you hear the click. Like that. Let's talk about clearances. Now when we designed this, we knew that clearance was going to be an issue, so we tried to keep everything as low as possible, tried to find the lowest and thinnest table we could find, and that's a 35mm thick table. But as a whole assembly installed on the bottom of the roof rack, it needs 40mm clearance. But you want more than that. So that's 40mm. But you want that extra 10mm, so 50mm clearance is what you're looking for. This is showing about 39 to 40mm there. So I just thought I'd let you see that and explain why we recommend that 50mm clearance. Having said that, you can buy spaces from Rhino or potentially make up your own spaces to lift that roof rack up maybe that 10 or 15mm, and that would be enough to get this table underneath your roof rack if you really want to find a solution to getting this installed. You have two options on how to install this table, either right way up or upside down. A couple of considerations. If you're in a dusty environment, you probably want to run this surface facing up so you don't get the dust on the actual tabletop. However, if you run it like this and it's raining, it tends to fill up with water. Generally not a problem because the first time you step on the brakes, all the water comes off. Other thing to consider too is if you have a table that's sort of warped or bent for whatever reason, over time you put too much weight in it and so forth, that might cause some issues with the clearances and the operation of the slide as well. But for me, I like to run it upside down, like so, because that reduces the likelihood of the legs dropping down if you're running on really rough roads, and also keeps that tabletop nice and clean. That's the roof rack table slide installed. Really good use of that space in between your roof rack and your roof. Absolute pain in the butt to install depending on your application, but well worth the effort.